Sorry about that. So, how does my translator sound? Not too grating, I hope. I'm still getting the hang of using one, so I tend to forget to turn it on. The default voice sounds a little awkward, but I guess it'll do if it means I can talk to you. Yeah, anyway, Inkopolis Square is bustling right now, isn't it? It's been real fresh since the official launch party yesterday, but I think its popularity gained steam with the Splatfest World Premiere last weekend. Every inkling worth their ink showed up to that event. Even I crept out of my shell to see what the fuss was about, but let me tell you, that felt like a mistake for most of the evening. I woke up in a splendid mood and I was ready to take on the world. The coolest cats and trendsetters were going to be there, so this was my big shot to finally make some friends. I've done all the research I could on how to bond with peers, and the secret lies in building connections and avoiding errors of communication. I'm kind of an introverted inkling, so those have never really been my strong suit, but that wasn't going to stop me from trying. I camouflaged my skin to the palest tone I could muster, slipped in my slickest contacts, styled my tentacles to the extreme, and even put on my best pair of shorts. I'll tell you, I was dressed to impress. It's not often I put my Tenatech splattershot skills to work in the field, since I've never officially competed in a turf war before, so I made a point of practicing on my way to the square. If I was going to leave an impression, handling my ink with some level of competency was critical. Although I'm nowhere near a professional level, I spent a few months over the past 2 years training in the alleys outside Inkopolis Plaza. I'd sit in on a few games from time to time, so I've got a good feel for how turf wars are played despite never participating myself. I built up a pretty impressive arsenal too. Although none of them can overthrow my splattershot, I also own a splat roller, splat charger, and splat dualies. I've heard those dualies are particularly good for mobility, but I haven't had a chance to really break them in yet. It was kinda surreal once I arrived at the square. I've never seen Pearl and Marina live before, so I was a little starstruck. Their band is just off the hook. It was really something just seeing an Octoling in the flesh, too. You never come across them in these parts. But I'm slipping off the rail here. I arrived just in time to see them announce the Splatfest theme and instruct interested participants to register at the terminal near the stage. Between cake and ice cream, I was confident cake would be the most popular pick, since I know how Inklings think. So I signed up for the winning side and claimed my Splatfest tee. After that was sorted out, I scuttled straight to the lobby. Fortunately, it didn't take long for me to be sorted into a team. When I was watching the monitor, I thought all my allies had cool titles. And then I saw mine. Nobody takes fanboys seriously, so I was at a disadvantage right from the start. That didn't dull my enthusiasm, though. What knocked me down a peg was the tension of being on the field. I forgot how to jump and instinctively pulled out my map, but I recovered quickly and started leading the pack straight into the heart of the battlefield. This one inkling, Nathan, was by my side for a bit and it felt great. We were fighting side by side, building a connection. I was overjoyed how quickly I managed to become part of a team. The thought of making friends this early in the event had me so distracted that I jumped into the lake thinking it was ground. Not my finest moment. When I spawned back in action, I swiftly took out my map again to familiarize myself with the layout so I wouldn't wander out of bounds again. But as I did, reality hit. And it hit hard. My connection was so clearly unstable, and the camaraderie I thought I felt with Nathan was never really there. When I put my map away, I noticed everyone on my team was gone. They abandoned me. I searched for them, but it didn't take long for me to realize there was an error with my communication and I needed to withdraw. I roamed around the square for a bit, but before that I loitered in a quiet alley until I was ready to face the world again. I watched a jellyfish play some sort of rhythm game and spent some time admiring the machines once my courage was patched up. But listening to the band is what really helped settle my nerves. Everyone was really into it, cheering and rocking to the beat, but I was stiff as a board. Letting loose in a crowd is just beyond my capabilities right now. I decided to try getting a little advice from Judd, but he basically just told me to dive back into it. I'll admit, I didn't feel ready to face rejection on that scale again, so I stared up at the light show and mulled over my options. I could swallow my shame and just join another turf war, or attempt to mingle here in the square. I opted for the latter, but that was clearly not the right call. I don't know how to talk to Inklings at parties, so I dashed back to the lobby and tried another match. There's no need for ink breakers out there. Everyone's focused on the fight, so friendship is built through shared experiences. It's the perfect place for building connections. But that match made me question everything. My team split up from the onset, and not long after I crossed paths with one of my allies, it was clear to me that our connection was unstable. Before I knew it, my team left me alone to face the only enemy who stuck around. I should have withdrew right then and there, but I decided to press on in spite of my deserters. That was a mistake. The other remaining inkling was apathetic to the game and refused to participate. I must have unloaded at least a gallon of ink, but he didn't even react. It's like he couldn't even be bothered to acknowledge I was there. I left that match even more frustrated and defeated than the last, but instead of throwing in the towel and returning to the alley, I just watched the show. For a considerable while. Being a spectator wasn't doing the trick this time though, so I decided to seek out the next best thing. Comfort food. Of course, I was so excited to come out to the square that I forgot to pack my tickets and coins, so all I could do was window shop. It hasn't been open long, but the Crust Bucket is probably the best place for meals on wheels. The Krusty Sandwich in particular is a personal favorite of mine, and it doubles your experience to boot. With a taste for browsing on my tongue, I figured I'd stop in at another local business. The only one open at the time seemed to be Headspace. My headband wasn't particularly fresh, so I thought checking out some new styles could be worthwhile. The shopkeeper was a sea slug named Flo. An interesting character, that's for sure. She claimed to have read my aura and the eagerness it carries, but refused to sell me anything if I didn't put my energy into improving myself. Guess it was fine I didn't have any coins on me. What struck me though was how she called me friend and gave me words of encouragement to rejoin the fray. She was much more inspirational than Judd. Before I stepped out, I seem to recall feeling like her apprentice Crayman and I were kindred spirits, but I can't remember why. I took a few minutes to appreciate where I was before returning to the lobby. The sheer amount of screens in the square was ridiculous, but the artwork was impressive. So many talented Inklings gather at that place. There's also some weird Squid kids out there in the square too, but I kept my distance from them. Pearl and Marina's recording studio also held my attention for longer than I'd care to admit. It was an impressive space, but I was caught up thinking about what it represented. Those two are so popular. Crowds of people swarm just for a chance to see them, and thousands of Inklings tune in just to hear what they have to say. But they have tons of friends too. Dwelling on envy doesn't get you anywhere though, so I eventually shook it off and listened to their announcement. It was time for a stage rotation. I didn't have a chance to check out Starfish main stage, but I was glad I at least had an opportunity to admire Inkblot Art Academy before the switch was made. Humpback Pump Track and Moray Towers were where I'd try establishing connections next, and while my optimism had deflated, I still held a shred of hope in my heart. That was torn to shreds during my first match at Moray Towers though. When the going got tough, instead of building a connection through adversity, my team ditched me so I could lose in isolation. When the verdict was ruled, I just couldn't hold back my disappointment and fell to the floor. This was rock bottom for me. Despite my best efforts and the encouragement I received, I just couldn't overcome my communication errors. Strangely enough, it was at this point where the organizers saw fit to change my title to Cake Fiend. Things were gonna get worse before they got better though. My first battle in Humpback Pump Track went awry almost from the onset. It was clear my connection with my allies was weak at best, and everyone abandoned me again. Making matters worse, the organizers were becoming suspicious of me, like I was doing something wrong. It wasn't my fault no one liked playing with me though. I'm not sure why communication was so difficult, but I didn't let that discourage me for too long. As it turns out, tenacity proved to be the solution to my problem. Other Inklings must have taken notice of how I struggled on when I was left alone. Sure, I'd flee to the alley when hope was lost, but I'd always hold out as long as I could. Either way, Inklings started to join me and stick around to the bitter end. And to my surprise, we were doing well. Exceptionally well in some cases. My training seemed to be paying off because I was able to take out the opposition and rank highest on the team. What made it all the better though was the clear improvement in my communication. Instead of growing unstable, my connections were steady, and I was well on my way to making friends. By the end of the night, I had the confidence to approach other Inklings in the square. Since we were all there because of our love of the sport, there was some common ground to kick off small talk and grow conversations from there. I never got the courage to move to the beat like everyone else, but I still made progress by my own standards. Things started to look promising. I was gaining the respect of my peers in the turf war arenas, and it was all because I didn't give up. I might have arrived a squid out of ink, but I didn't regret attending the Splatfest World Premiere. It'll definitely be something I look back on as a stepping stone in my competitive career. The event where I made my first friends and showed my mettle on the battlefield. Just you wait, I'll have fans at my back one day. Those cheers will be for me.